Hey, I just want to say thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning. I've been a big fan since I was a kid, and I kind of been chasing you around for like 5 years of my radio career trying to get an interview. So this is awesome. Thanks a lot for doing it, man.
Of course, no problems, man. I'm glad it finally happened.
Awesome. So the first 21, How I Became Nikki Sixx is your new book. It's also the name of the new 6 a.m. song. Both are fantastic. The first 21, the book is has recently become a New York Times bestseller. Read it over the weekend. Such a great read. A little different from your other books like The Heroin Diaries and The Dirt, and then it delves deeper into your past. What was the inspiration for writing this one, Nikki?
I left a city called Jerome, Idaho, when I was about 17 years old on a Greyhound bus with a couple T-Rex tapes and maybe the first two Aerosmith albums, I don't know, and a guitar. And I got headed to Los Angeles. My uncle said I could stay down there for a second in his guest room. And that just opened up a whole can of worms for a dreamer. And, my career's been well documented, but a few years ago, a little more than a few years ago, Los Angeles started to really lose its luster for me personally. I kept moving farther and farther and farther to the point now where I'm so far from Los Angeles that if someone goes, "Hey, do you want to meet me for dinner in the city?" It's an hour and a half. So I'm like, at that point, me and my wife were just talking. We're like, why don't we do something new and exciting and get out of the big city? I go to enough big cities on tour. I get that experience. And we have a 2.5-year-old, and give her an opportunity to grow up with wildlife and hiking and fishing, and that's exactly what happened. And we are so happy up here. Um,
Wyoming, right?
Wyoming, yeah, Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Nice.
And it's really been wonderful, and it reminds me of my childhood in a lot of ways. But what it did was it inspired me to go back and take a look at those years. I was originally writing it was a bit of a finance book to help artists who come into money, like myself and a lot of athletes and actors with no real understanding of money, and then they end up bankrupt.
Right.
And then it breaks my heart. Someone that spends their whole life working at their craft and then loses everything because they don't have any. So it was a kind of a short idea for a book. And then I just, the more I thought about it, I was like, that's not very sexy. Maybe I'll write that in like when I'm 72 or 75 or something. And I started this idea of going back and exploring my youth. And I got to connect to my friends when I was 13, when I was 11, my family, my aunt who was there when I was born, my stories of my sister who was, born with Down syndrome, and stories that my mom told me that, my dad just abandoned me. And it's not true. My dad stayed a long time, and there's a lot of stuff about my mom, but I really wanted to write this book from an empathetic view. I didn't want to be like, let's just make it a slaughter fest and all about me and how great I am and look what I did and how bad you did me. It wasn't about that. It was a coming of age, discovery of music, discovery of girls, of hot rods, of hanging out sneaking out and going to parties and listening to Uriah Heep and having your mind blown, and then getting a Deep Purple record and trying to make sense of it all, from a small town. And then the dream, and the best thing that happened to me in my life, bro, is my grandfather, not we, my grandfather got up before the sun came up, and he came home from work when the sun was down. And that man never complained. He always had time for me, to take me fishing, to take me out, exploring. He had no formal education. There was no musical instruments. There was turn the music down in the bedroom kid, right? Type guy, blue collar, hardworking, never complaining. And I learned that. And when I got to Hollywood, that was my mantra. I work harder than anybody else, and I never complain. And I still do it to this day. And I think that you can use that as a great tool to forward yourself in your dream, in what it is that you want to do. So some of this stuff I knew about myself, and some of this stuff was discovery during the writing.
Did you have to reach out to people from your past to kind of put some of these stories together? Because a lot of the details in the book are so vivid, and I would imagine, being it so long ago, there might be some blanks that you needed to fill in.
You want to hear a fun story?
I do.
Oh,
Absolutely.
what we did was we did the book the first 21 years. Me and my co-writer Alex. I wrote my last book. It took me 2.5 years to write. I have too much going on in my life right now to be the guy who's just doing all the writing. So we verbally did the book. Then we started straightening out what needed to be straightened out. And then we made tint posts. And so there was all these people from my life, my friend Bubba, my friend Alan Weeks, my first girlfriend, Susie Maddox. And so then the search began. And when we found Susie, Alex had called me and said, I found her. She doesn't live in Jerome, Idaho anymore. She lives in this other location. That she has a Facebook, but there's nothing on it. There's no email. She's not on Twitter. She's not on Instagram, but there was this landline. And he goes, what do you want to do? And I go, you call it. You call it first, because I think you'll be able to say, I'm working on a book about Frank Ferrana. So she answers the phone. He says, I'm working on a book about Frank Ferrana. Do you remember him? And would you talk to me? And she goes, oh, I remember Frank. Yeah. Whatever happened to Frank? As well, he went to Seattle. And she goes, I remember he went to Seattle. It was, well, now he lives with his family in Wyoming, and he lived for a long time in Los Angeles. She goes, oh, so what did Frank ever end up doing? And it was so beautiful, because he's like, well, he's in a band. She goes, Frank's in a band?
That's amazing.
And then he tells her, and she's like, it's quiet for a second. She goes, I had the Dr. Feelgood album in my hand. I had heard some songs on the radio, and I turned it over and I looked at the band. Goes, that guy looks just like my first boyfriend. But she looks down, and it wasn't. It was Nikki Sixx, obviously. So
Right.
I thought there's some innocence in this book like that. That's just really warmed my heart.
You've made the book The Dirt into a movie, which was absolutely fantastic. I watched that a bunch of times. Like, The Dirt still sits on my coffee table to this day. It's like my rock and roll Bible. Would you like to see this book, The First 21, or the Heroin Diaries, turned into a feature film along the way too?
Well, Heroin Diaries, we were close. We were already starting pre-production on a theater run on that. The idea was to take that from city to city and plug into the recovery community and give back that way. So that obviously got kicked directly in the nuts with COVID. So
As it did everything, yeah.
As did everything, including, the supply chain for my 2.5-year-old daughter's build-a-blocks. It's like, whatever it is, it's affected everything, so we're all in this together. I love the idea of books and music, poetry and photography, photography, documentaries. I love all these connective things. So I'm always open to that. Right now, I just formed a company with a huge director, an animation company, to create children's programming, episodic, and it's around music. And then we're also me and my wife are working on a children's book. Because of the last administration and the divisiveness of it, I feel that these young kids are hearing and seeing a conflict constantly. So the idea was a little girl who uses her imagination to meet people that are different than her. and how we're actually all very much the same. So parents to be able to read this to their kids. These could become animated shows. They could become all kinds of different things. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now as far as developing stuff. The idea of just, I did do one song this year. I did this project, LA Rats.
I heard that. That was awesome too.
That was fun, right?
Yeah.
With John Five, Atomic Lefetos, and Rob Zombie. And that was fun. But again, it was plugged into a movie. Right. It was for that movie, Ice Road, like based on the Ice Road Truckers. So that's kind of where my head's at right now. I'm not so excited about, let me write 10 songs and put a record out. I want, you know, what goes with that?
Yeah. The next thing it looks like is coming up is Motley Crue, the stadium tour. What was the process like getting the band back together for that? Because I know you had the cessation of touring clause and you blew up that death contract. You guys are back out on the road after the whole pandemic thing gears down a little bit. What was the phone call like to the guys?
I mean, it was pretty, it was pretty interesting because when we talked to each other, it was all about, excuse me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey guys, I'm doing press. Baby, I'm doing press. When you live in Wyoming and you have snow up to your nuts and the air and the heating isn't working, that was our interruption. So sorry about that.
Not a problem.
You know, it was pretty interesting. You know, it's like we knocked it on the head because we felt like we had said everything we wanted to say. We felt that we were young enough where we had time left on the clock to do other stuff. And I think it ended in a really good way. We never intended on getting back together. It was the movie. We always knew we were going to do the movie.
Yeah.
And then getting in the studio and making music was like, that was fun. You know, I was like, yeah, we'll do some songs for the movie. And we got the movie and it's been great. High five, Tommy, call me for sushi. And then it started. It just started rolling and rolling. Now there's like 84 million people seen the movie. And the phone calls started coming in from around the world. And, you know, we owed it to ourselves to have that conversation because, you know, if three of us were like, let's go do it, and a fourth was not, that's what the contract was about.
Yeah.
No, we couldn't leave two guys behind and go out and have two versions of Motley Crue. So it was an exciting time, something to celebrate. And if there was any hem and hawing, it was around if the idea of going and doing arenas. Was like, we've done arenas, we've done stadiums, we've done arenas, we've done festivals. We just felt like it isn't going to get any bigger than how we ended it. And then came the, no, they want to do stadiums. And we're like, oh, well, that's a little different conversation. And Def Leppard wants to do it with you, the whole thing. So then it was us and Def Leppard and talking and what do they see and we've played many shows together before, so it was fantastic. And then I think eight went on sale and sold out, 8 more sold out, 8 more sold out. And everyone's like, this is going to be a great run. And I figured that was going to be it. And then COVID came and knocked it on its heels like everybody else, or a lot of people. And then we decided not to tour this year because we weren't comfortable enough yet personally, and maybe it wasn't the right thing for the fans, in our opinion, you know, or right, for our crew. So during that time, we got to start talking more. And what's Europe look like? Like, you know what? We love Japan. Wow, what a show in Japan. Like Motley Crue, Def Leppard, if it's Poison and Joan Jett, they stick with us. And those are like huge shows in Australia. And so that's where it is. And then this fucking mutation of COVID keeps happening. So we're like, okay, we're doing America. We got our protocols. We know exactly how we're going to do it. what's going to happen in 23, and we don't know. We really don't know. I've heard a lot of people talk about Omicron. Is that how you say it? Omicron?
I think it Omicron. I'm
Om-
still trying to figure it out because everyone seems to say it differently.
You know what I say right here? We're changing the fucking name. We're just going to call it, let's just call it Omni. No, let's call it Cron.
Or
Cron is not cool.
Death Star 2022.
That's what it's called. I've heard that it's a lot more contagious, but it's also a weaker strain, so that if people do get it, it's more like a headache or a stomach ache or something for a day. So especially for vaccinated people. So there's some talk about that's a positive. It's weakening. So we're keeping our eye on all the information out there, and how do we get a stadium tour to Europe? How do we get it to Japan? If it needs to be the right safety protocols. But 100%, June 19th, this tour kicks off in Atlanta, Georgia. Man, I can't wait.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, man, I can't wait. I miss it. I miss my favorite thing is band rehearsal. So like all of May, we rehearse and we break down the songs and we get to hang out just like we did in 1981, man. There's nobody there. There's nobody coming in and interrupting. It's just the four of us sitting in a circle, and then then we turn and face you and go for it live.
Are we going to see anything like previous tours, Tommy, on a roller coaster or whatnot?
We have some very, very cool things that are in development, let's say.
Can't blow all the surprises, I guess. Hey,
different than anything we've done before.
Yeah.
I don't think really, here's my thought on pyro. By the way, I love pyro. Like, if you know anything about me, you're like, yeah, Nikki used to light himself on fire.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're not talking to a guy who doesn't like fire, but you're talking to a guy who, every time I turn on a baseball game or a football game or some D-level band, they've all got this like fire goes up, fire goes down, fire goes up, fire goes down. And I just feel like it's kind of become like, it's not even like, for us, we were covered in fire retardant. We had fire shooting at us. I had a flamethrower. So unless you're going to go the Rammstein route, who I love,
those guys are nuts live with their pyro.
We need to rethink what can we do to blow your mind? And that's where we're at right now.
Nikki Sixx, you're #1 bestseller. You've made some of the most iconic rock music in history. You've had your own syndicated radio show, 6th Sense. You're an amazing photographer. The Dirt, one of the best rock biopics that's ever been released. Word on the street is you sold the rights to your music to BMG for a whole pile of money. The question is, what drives you to keep the output level so high, and what do you still hope to accomplish?
I just remember being a kid and carrying around a notepad and documenting everything, whether it was at school or things I saw. I feel like I'm a bit of a natural born documentarian. My wife, I'm sure at times would like to pull her hair out, but we'll just be sitting there and I go, look at the shadow falling across that tree. And she's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. My mind is kind of a collective type brain. I'm collecting, I'm writing, I'm documenting, I'm making a little riff, and I'm calling it something weird and that inspires a lyric. So that's kind of like where I'm at, right? Well, that's kind of where I've always been, bro, to be honest with you. And so I don't really know how to stop that. I don't really know how to stop that. It's just gonna kind of continuously happen. I do a lot of stuff, and I don't, I'm not stupid. I mean, I have a mortgage just like you. I have a car payment, car insurance, just like everybody else. But But, I don't do everything that I do for money. The Heroin Diaries, we're able to give away over $1 million to help kids that are struggling from that.
Covenant House, I remember.
Yeah, thank you for remembering that. And it helped a lot of kids, and it's the right thing to do. So I do a lot of stuff that I love, and then I do other stuff because I have bills too. So I'm always in this place. It's like, oh, this is a cool project. I just got this offer for this poetry book thing I've been talking about forever, and it's a no money maker. It's a coffee table book. It's got one of my photos in it and a poem, and it's big, and it's got this. It's very artsy, and I just want to do it for me. Now, maybe it'll sell a few books, maybe it won't. A lot of people don't buy poetry books, especially from guys that light themselves on fire. But it's something I need to do.
You do it for the love.
I do it for the love, and so it's constantly kind of happening. Sometimes it's like wrangling cats in my brain. It's like they're going like this. I got to wrangle them in. But that's like people like to loosely use the term, ADD. I don't think I have ADD as much as I just have this like dreamer thing in my brain. And it sometimes can be frustrating. I can zone out sometimes and zone into other things, which I still do, and I remember getting sent to the principal's office for not paying attention to the teacher. But what I remember about that exact experience, she was talking about whatever she was talking about, and it was fall, and we lived in New Mexico, and these leaves were falling like teardrops from the sky. I mean, from the trees, right? And I started writing it, and she came over, she goes, "What are you writing?" And I got, it's what I still do. I can't help it. So don't go out to dinner with me. I'm over in the corner. You're like, wow, this is a boring dinner. Nikki's like, writing on his shoe because he has to document his idea. But that's kind of how my brain works. And I have come to really enjoy it.
And millions of people across the world are happy that it does. Nikki Sixx, I know I've kept you probably longer than I should. Thank you so much for your generous amount of time today. And as I said earlier, it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to finally talk to you.
Thanks, man. You be good, okay?